Welcome back, everybody, to Chazin-the-Dream, your podcast dedicated to workplace culture development. I got to tell y'all, I'm so thrilled this morning to have Clay Hicks on the program. Let me kind of tee it up for you all, and then we'll dive right in. Okay, Clay?
Sir. Thank you for having me, Ethan.
My pleasure. So Clay Hicks is a dynamic entrepreneur who has successfully built a diverse portfolio of, check this out, not one, not two, but five thriving companies, and as an accomplished author and a speaker and trainer on how to cultivate meaningful, powerful professional relationships. Clay founded his first venture, H7 Network, back in 2008. His unwavering mission is to empower underserved entrepreneurs and sales professionals. And he's revolutionized, and I can attest to this, I'll explain to you why, the way business professionals connect, serve with purpose, and they ask for support from their peers on a global scale. H7 Network franchise serves as a leading national B2B networking platform. Welcome to the show, Clay.
Thanks for having me, Ethan.
Not at all. As I said, my pleasure. So a little bit of inside baseball. You and I met going on 2 years ago when you were kind enough to introduce me into H7 Network and allow me to attend a bunch of meetings. And
Yeah.
I have to tell you, man, I made a bunch of meaningful connections. So that's why I'm so excited to have you on the program today.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You had a great experience. Yeah, the
Well,
culture shined through there, didn't it?
yeah, look, I mean, one of the things that really impressed me was from like the moment you and I spoke, we hit it off in terms of, I think, our shared values on how you cultivate meaningful relationships, not by networking. So can you talk a little bit more about your philosophy and your framework and connect, serve, and ask? I mean, I want our audience to hear this.
Yeah, so essentially, connect, serve, and ask are three fundamentals to simply put how you treat another human. Okay, right? So
Wow.
when you meet with somebody in a one-to-one setting or you meet with a group, connect, serve, and ask should be how we should treat one another more or less these days. And so, just very quick background to connect, serve, and ask. I founded Connect, Serve, and Ask, those three fundamentals, back in August of 2018, after my first 3,000 one-to-ones. I met with 3,000 different people. It took 48 months. And, of course, just a quick, where are we at now? I'm at over 7,400 one-to-ones since that began. And so Connect, Serve, and Ask breaks it down in a simple kind of methodology that allows two people to connect better, to figure out how to, where the direction of the relationship may go, which could be mutually beneficial. It also removes exclusivity. Like if you and I are together and we align well, in order to align well, there has to be some level of methodology to actually determine that. And oftentimes these days it takes years or months to figure out if they're aligned. And this kind of speeds up that. The methodology kind of speeds that up to determine that.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that struck me early on coming to your meetings was you don't presume that people understand how to do this effectively, right? Like you
Right.
actually kind of developed a lot. What's evolved, I noticed, is you actually have a methodology on your member journey. And you actually, when you bring people in, and you brought in over 300 over the last year, and so this is resonating with people,
Yeah.
you actually train your members on how to do this. And you don't just talk a mantra of connect, serve, and ask, you actually train it for your members.
Yeah, so we didn't. We now require that to be a part of our community. Everybody takes what's called a Connect, Serve, and Ask certification, or CSA for short, is how we describe it. And at the beginning of last year, we began the requirement of that. And so yeah, it's really it's really impacted our culture to where people are much more open to the idea that they can't do business by themselves and they're not alone. And so supporting them in that relationship building journey enables them to gain more results from it. Number one, I mean, what kind of good results can you have from having good relationships, right? So that's where that kind of comes from.
Right.
Finding the people to align with and being able to actually become a professional relationship without being stuck in the friend zone. It really just
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because um, this is so kind of in my wheelhouse, but it's just something that hearing it from you gives a different level of credence. And if you can map that philosophy into the 7 laws of word of mouth, which people listening to this may not know is kind of the methodology, but you know, the Wizard of Oz behind your curtain.
yeah. So the 7 laws of word of mouth marketing, they were also born at the same time as Connect, Serve, and Ask, but they were not actually promoted or much done with them until over the last year. And so the 7 laws of word of mouth marketing is basically a baseline of, you know, if you don't follow, you know, essentially if you follow these laws, it actually gives you a steady foundation for your the development of how people perceive you now with the type of person that you are. Okay, very simply put, if you behave in this way and you follow these laws, people will actually be able to endorse you much easier. But they can't endorse you until you deploy the Connect, Serve, and Ask methodology. I hope that makes sense.
It kind of does, but you know what would be really interesting is if we kind of literally kind of game plan this where we actually talk through an example, or if you could explain how this actually plays out. Most people go into, whether it's virtual or they walk in a room, they may have very little knowledge about how to establish a relationship because they say, I don't need you to train me on this. I've been doing it my whole life and maybe doing it wrong. So
Yeah.
how does this actually play out?
So how it actually plays out in the marketplace as you as a human being going out to develop mutually beneficial relationships. To go back, just understand, like, to be prepared for that, let's just walk back and say, okay, so before I do anything, I need to understand the strategy behind what I'm trying to accomplish. Inside of that strategy are those 7 laws, like understanding them. I'll list them for you just so we have them. So it's focus, influence, collaboration, alignment, champion, service, win-win. Now, when you understand those laws, understand how they apply to you, because they apply to all of us in one way or another. When you do go out into the marketplace from that moment, you then go out with the goal of growing your business via networking. That is kind of the high level thing. You go out, you build relationships, you do the thing. Connect, Serve, and Ask enables you to earn trust faster. So when you go out to the social event and you get into your one-to-ones, which is always the goal, is to get into a one-to-one when you're out networking, you start with that Connect, Serve, and Ask methodology in your very first one-to-one, which enables you to focus your strategically communicate in such a way that enables you to earn trust faster.
Yep.
And then like and no follow. I hope that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I just need a little bit of guidance on, like, let's just assume this is a dance in 3 steps. So the connect is, I'm going to work my ass off in advance of sitting down with you or over the Zoom to understand a little bit of background about Clay, where you came from, your challenges, what you're interested in. I'm going to do some research, right? So that I can connect with you more meaningfully at a deeper level. The serve is to, you know, givers gain almost, I'm going to go out of my way to figure out how I can be of value to you by serving your personal professional needs. Like I get those two, right? Here's
Yeah.
where I'm curious, and if you could enlighten us on is your thought process around the ask. Because obviously you said something mutually beneficial or win-win.
Yeah.
I'm always stuck with, I go out of my way to try and connect and serve, and I get stuck on the ask. So if you could just walk through what that looks like in your model.
Yeah. So in the methodology behind ask, you first need to understand why you're asking. And to take one step back further, this connect, serve, and ask method is done in the very first one-to-one setting. Just so we're on the same page here. We're not
Thank you.
saying
Thank
three
you.
meetings down the road. We're saying now. Okay.
Right.
So, number one, ask, understand why you're doing it. So, why you ask in the first place is to empower the person across from you to be able to also earn your trust. You don't ask for the transaction, you ask because it's also important for that other person to be able to earn your trust too.
Hmm.
And when you connect, serve, don't ask, you take the power away from the other person being able to earn your trust.
That's something that I think a lot of people, myself included, didn't really understand before kind of coming into H7 Network and learning more about your philosophy. That ask piece really, it sounds like you're saying, helps build trust and enables the other person to kind of bring value to the relationship. So it's, again, mutually beneficial.
That's correct. You got it. So it empowers
Okay.
that person to be able to earn your trust as well. That's what it
Now,
does.
now we're going to go a little bit deep, Clay. So stay with me. Like, you look at the narrative arc of your career, and as I kind of went back and I looked at all of your career mobility and all the things you've ever done, there's this like Charleston Chew Nougaty Center, which is you going out of your way, like to build relationships, all your business ventures. But so somebody would almost ask, what the hell is the guy doing throughout his career building relationships? But yet you're also a serial entrepreneur. Like, isn't there narcissism in that? And how can you spend your whole career building relations? Like, it almost seems like a dichotomy or juxtaposition. Like, where did this passion for building relationships come from? Because clearly it's a part of your DNA.
It is actually. So I'm very fortunate that I know why I was born. And so H7 and all that I do is a vehicle for me to live out my purpose in life. Okay. Which is to value others by lifting them up, uniting them, and taking no credit. And so everything I do leaks from there. That is the source. That is the nougat that you mentioned. And so to be able to be fortunate enough to live out my purpose in life, what am I going to do? Throw it away?
Hmm.
I mean, it's just part of who I am
You
now.
haven't, this is not the first time you used that phrase, actually, at least in front
Yeah.
of me, is you talk a lot about living your purpose.
Yeah.
And I have to say, stalking you from afar since we first met, this message is resonating. And I don't know if COVID facilitated it or it just revealed some stuff, but you've got 39 groups. You've got 15 in the pipeline. Heck, you and I were talking, you're even in Canada, 300 new members going back a calendar year. So why do you think this message is resonating? This notion of meaningful relationships versus, it's a dirty word, I'm going to say it, networking.
Well, God's honest truth, Ethan, my purpose in life was given to me via doing all those one-to-ones. Okay. It didn't come out at once. It's been over time. And so, like, it's an attitude. Like, this is just who I am. I don't know how else to describe that. I'm not sure I can. So maybe ask me a different way so that maybe.
Yeah, no, I get that. Sometimes if something is just part of you in your soul, it's hard to kind of almost objectively describe it as process. So I'll flip the switch on you. One of the things I've noticed over the last 13, 14 years of my consulting practice is
Yeah.
I've been trying to get people to think the way you just articulated. And one of the stumbling blocks, well, there's a few, is this is like psychology. People are hardwired to be a little bit selfish. The
Mhm.
notion of when I go into a relationship, whether they're 3,000 one-on-ones or just the first one, I'm going to look at the other individual across from me and say, what can I get from them?
Sure.
So just, I mean, just anecdotally, that's been my kind of experience. So what you're talking about, espousing of this notion of doing for others and
Yeah.
teaching and coaching sometimes can be a little bit contrary to what human behavior is. How do you teach people who come into H7 Network, or just people who you're coaching, to shift their mindset a little bit?
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. All right. So the mindset, how I show them how to change their mindset is explaining and understanding not only the strategy, but as to why you would do it in the first place. Okay.
Okay.
Those two methodologies have to be shared. So understanding the word of mouth marketing strategy from up high, and then deploying that, understanding the mindset behind it, and then the actual techniques that go along with it.
Right. And I guess I'm asking Clay to compartmentalize because I love the way you frame that. It's almost like somebody comes to you, you kind of give them the high level of this, and they say, yeah, but Clay, why should I be rethinking my approach to relationship cultivation? Especially sales professionals, people who run their own things. Like, how do you answer their why do I do this?
Well, actually, we share with them, we try to empower them to come up with their own why. So that why originally is going to come back to, well, so I'm going to do one-to-ones. Let's pick one of the pitfalls that I share all the time. That's part of the process too, is understanding the
Right.
misconceptions
Right.
around things, right? And so when they go into just a singular one-to-one, there is a culture that exists in this country that comes all the way down to a local level where when you go one-to-one with a person, it might end up being a little transactional.
That,
Okay.
yeah, that was the question. Thank you for reframing
Yeah.
it so it made sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So it then becomes transactional. Well, that's kind of born and bred into us a little bit because it's shown to us at a local level. I prefer not to say where, but I will say at a local level, the professional comes in and they say, okay, I'm a salesman right now. So I go into a very specific place. And inside of this specific place, there's no learning on how to develop a relationship. They see like business cards on a wall. They go in and they say, hey, I want to join this specific thing because these kinds of companies are in the room and I want to network with them. And then they get in there and they find out those people aren't there. The C-level of that company isn't even there. And so now what? Now what? They're going to go start meeting with people. And then they naturally, because they're a salesperson, naturally now say, okay, well, this person is somebody I could sell to. So let's do the one-to-one. And then I'm going to be transactional. So bringing back
Right.
where that is a misconception and showing them how that's a misconception and then how to arrange their mindset, which begins to, they need to understand why they're doing it in the first place. Now that can help them with their mindset. And that's how we do our training.
So, yeah, I get that. And, in our time remaining, I want to ask you, as you look into the future and you look at your crystal ball for you, for H7 Network, for the world of relationship cultivating, where do you think directionally, where do you see yourself going? What are your business goals? But also in the framework of, we had this thing called the global pandemic,
Yeah.
right? And people were forced to go from meeting face to face, doing this, what we're still doing a little bit online, and changing the way that they do that relationship cultivation. So given post-COVID, where we are right now, and where you see yourself in H7 going, where do you see the future of all of this relationship cultivation kind of transforming to?
Well, so I see that essentially going back to the basics is going to be imperative. So when you look at where we were prior to the pandemic and where we are now, there's more technology being used. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Technology is taking the place of, let's just use something simple like you can subscribe to a software that helps you get appointments. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So when you look
Yeah.
at those kinds of things, the directions we're going is it's going to be even more vital to make sure we're earning trust. So speaking from an internationally, the direction we are moving is becoming more of a word of mouth marketing authority, where I'll be writing more books, speaking more, hopefully getting into more speaking opportunities so that we can go out and spread this message. Because you may recall, before the pandemic, we were only in person. We only had members in 5 states. Now, on the other side of the pandemic, we now have thousands of members across 47 states and 11 countries, all by word of mouth. So the desire is actually there for us to cultivate that and to get that into more and more of our fabric of our culture professionally.
And, part of the beauty of doing this virtually is removing those physical limitations by creating more kind of global bridge. And as we said earlier, obviously this message is resonating. There's broad appeal. And as you get your word out there, right? And we get more Clay every day, and we do more of the spreading the message. As we kind of wrap up here today, how do people find out more about H7 Network? How do people get more Clay?
All right. So number one, I am on LinkedIn. So look up Clay Hicks. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Number two, it might be better, even if you do connect with me, to ask me for a one-to-one, because I'd love to do one with you. Right?
Man, I knew that was coming. And by the way, Clay, I will put the links to your LinkedIn profile and the website in the description down below.
Yeah, thank you. And then lastly, when you go to h7network.com, you can learn more about the 7 laws, the differences between word of mouth marketing and networking, frequently asked questions, which is where it starts. What we discussed earlier about going into a room and then behaving somewhat transactionally. You can learn how to overcome some of that and change your mindset a little bit by doing some of the research right there on the homepage of the website to gain a better understanding of it. But of course, I'd love to do a one-to-one with you as well.
And so let's just bundle those together. So first off, somebody goes to h7network.com, they look at those 7 laws of word of mouth, and then they schedule the one-on-one, and they can really pick your brain and you can help them dive into it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They can even learn on the website, not only just about the 7 laws, but if they want to learn a little bit more about each of the laws, they can learn about the techniques required to obtain those, to fulfill those laws.
Right. And hey, brother, we couldn't get into it because of the amount of the scope and depth and breadth of content you have up there, but it's all there. And I'm going to make a strong recommendation. People, if they want to get a keener understanding of your philosophy, your values, your methodology, they dive in there. Well, listen, Clay, nobody ever complained about a speech being too short. I really appreciate your time this morning and you enlightening people about you, your background, your experience as H7, and really the beauty of going from networking to relationship building.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ethan, for having me on, and I hope everybody was able to gain some value from listening today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clay.